I'm your host today, 𝗟𝗘𝗧'𝗦, and I have with me Deniz 𝗟𝗘𝗧'𝗦, the Program Director for the AIFS Abroad Budapest program. I will tell you a little bit about me first. I'm the Director of Strategic Communications and Engagement at AIFS Abroad, and I was recently lucky enough to travel to Budapest to see Deniz's incredible program. So that's why we're talking today, to sort of learn a little bit about her perspective as an on-site director and to share more about her program. So Deniz, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Deniz, and I've been the director of the Budapest program since 2018. We have a very nice program that is set in this beautiful city.
And so what is your background? What brought you to Budapest?
So I came to Budapest as a student. I started my PhD here in Budapest, and took me 5 years to finish. And then after a while, I thought, why don't I start a program here to make the city more available to students like me who like to study abroad. So that's my background. I'm a political scientist by training. So I look at political science, some of the larger questions about how people choose amongst the candidates for elected offices. I speak a bit of Hungarian. By now, it's more than a bit. So I get by. It's a very difficult language. My native tongue is Turkish. And I also speak some German in addition to English.
Wow, I bet you're a lot of fun at dinner parties right now with all your election knowledge and insight. I know what I was struck by when I was in Budapest, which is just kind of the incredible architectural beauty. I think we can see Budapest in a photo and imagine ourselves there, but also the scale of it seems so grand. What do you think is unique about Budapest as a study location, especially for like US students?
Yes, you're right. From the pictures, it looks like a fairy tale city. It's divided by this beautiful setting of a river. One side is very, very hilly. So the setting is probably the most beautiful where in Europe, where the Danube goes through. It is a grand city, but what makes the city very accessible is that it is actually very easy to navigate. And for US students who may not be so used to public transport or using transport or navigating public transport, it's actually quite easy to use. So within the first week of their arrival, they see how accessible the city is in terms of using public transport, getting around, getting their bearings. So it is a grand city, but it's also very easy to access certain sites and certain important cultural sites.
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting because it looks bigger than it feels. And what I mean by that is like the buildings are so big and grand, and it was once this like capital, of an empire. But I think when you're down in it, it feels like most of the city that you'd ever need to be in is walkable. And sure, maybe a 40-minute walk, but walkable with a good pair of shoes, right? Besides like the ease of transportation in the city, what do you think students are most surprised by in Budapest or Hungary in general when they arrive?
So it is a good mix of what is familiar and what is absolutely not familiar. So it's not as familiar as to the cities back home, back in the US, in the sense of how people go around doing things, shopping, they acquire certain services and whatnot. That might be not very familiar. But in the sense that there's a lot of familiarity for how people approach life and the kind of study or work-life balance, it's probably on the more busy side rather than other parts of Europe. People do work, and I think they do overwork a little. I think what surprises students is this easy balance between surprising and unfamiliar, but also familiar enough so that they are not, dealing with everyday difficulties to get around or go from class to class or to do their shopping. So I think it's this wonderful, easy balance. Another thing is that history is very much weaved into their everyday life. So there is not one particular historic part of the city, but there are multiple centers of the city that a student in their everyday travels through. And then they immediately realize they are part of this historical memory that they hear about in classes by just walking along those streets. Yes, good shoes are important. You can do a lot of walking, but it's also a very easy to walk around city. It is not cut off by major highways. Both sides of the river is very easy to walk through and then appreciate these important sites. But historical memory is in everyday life. You don't have to go to a particular center of the city to just appreciate, centuries of history. It's in every single part of the city that you can appreciate part of Hungarian history and society.
Yeah, you can really feel that, like the sort of layers of history kind of built. I live in Rome, as you know, yeah, and it's the same in Rome, where it's like each sort of district was built by a different ruler or empire or government that, has historical significance, good or bad, that, and that you can sort of feel that around every corner. And you do feel that in Budapest for sure. You've got like from your Buda Castle district to the Palace district to there are so many places and corners that have their own historical context and sort of nervous system. And they all sort of like overlap. And they overlap really kind of where Corvinus is and where students are living, which is really incredible. I was really struck that like the student housing overlooks all of it. And so you kind of have this like bird's eye view of the city, and you can really see how it has been built and changed by different eras, because you can see this like state of the art stadium, and then you see a castle, and then you see, it's very interwoven for sure. Yeah, I was really struck by that in a way that I also feel that way about Rome. Coming back to sort of the student experience and students who do select Budapest as the place that they want to study abroad, chances are most students only study abroad one time as an undergraduate, right? And so it's an impactful experience for almost everyone. We hear that all the time. What is the most, I guess, interesting or intriguing part of your job as the sort of shepherd of this experience, as the program director for a group of students from North America?
It is a very hard to choose answer, because
it's not a simple one probably either.
Fascinating parts. Well, actually observing the difference between when students arrive and this kind of amazement mixed with confusion. Obviously, the language barrier makes things a little bit less easy to access or explain. And then by the time they leave, they are experts in things. And what amazes me is that the percentage of students that make an effort and make a point of coming back and seeing me after a few years or after a few semesters, that always amazes me, is that it is not a big city or touristy destination yet. So it's not in everyone's bucket list to visit. But those who've been in those 4 months or however long, they make it their own, and they make a point of coming back to this beautiful familiarity. And that always surprises me quite a bit. And that makes it very fascinating for me, both to observe their development from the time they arrive and between the arrival and departure, but also how much of an effort they make to come back and revisit.
Well, I mean, I would argue that's probably a pretty incredible reflection of you and your work, because it feels like home to them. So they've come to a place and lived there for 4 months, 5 months, and it becomes a home, a center of gravity for them in a way that, if you think about it, this semester has flown by in a blur for most people on their regular college campus. But for your students, it's a lifetime in just a few months.
Yeah.
And that is change, and that is growth, and it's the things that they're doing on their own. But I think, certainly there's something to be said for having an emotional connection with a place and needing a conduit for that, which is what you are. You're a conduit for the emotional connection to Budapest and to Hungary. We see that all the time in your students and how much they fall in love with the city and the country and you, and and that's why they come back probably, right? But do you think there's a particular story or a situation that you kind of return to, your job is not easy. You're on call all the time, day and night, taking care of groups of students in a new city, in a new country. And in those moments that you kind of need that touchstone, is there a story or a situation that you go back to that like kind of gives meaning and lends meaning to the hard work that you do?
Yeah, I really like the way you phrased it, is that touchstone idea. I think I'm going to keep thinking about that. One thing that's really touched me recently is we've had a student from a very small school in southern Florida. He came with some notions of maybe some Hungarian heritage, but maybe a lost last name from his family. He and I had many conversations through the semester that I urged him to do a little bit of research. He also minors in history, so he has some tools to do some research. And lo and behold, he found out he does have Hungarian heritage that his grandparents weren't very comfortable talking about. And he's continued to learn the language and really did an extra effort to learn this very difficult language. And he has all kinds of plans to come back and potentially apply for a Hungarian heritage scholarship, which may, if things go right, lead to him applying for a passport to be a citizen of this country. So I see the progression from something very blurry and probably quite abstract to something quite concrete connection, a very, permanent connection that's been established in this student. So I always remember that, and I think I always will.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, thank you for making time. Is there anything else that you would want to add or to say before we sign off?
Yes. So Budapest is coming up as kind of the site to explore. It's still underexplored, but do believe the hype. Do come and explore for yourself. It is a city of wonders, not just a city itself, but the country. And we look forward to seeing you.
I already missed the food. So I'll be back. I will definitely be back.
Good.
Thank you again for making time, and thank you for hosting me in Budapest.
Thank you, Michelle, for being such a lovely guest. We'd love to have you again.
Oh, can't wait. All right. We'll see you soon. Bye.